Well, the lawyer representing a former Nazi interpreter has filed a motion to permanently suspend deportation proceedings against him. Helmut Oberlander has been fighting for decades to stay in Canada. Katie Nicholson has been following this story, and she joins us now. Katie, thanks for joining us. What's the latest development?
Well, late yesterday, John, we got word from Ron Polton, who is the lawyer representing Mr. Oberlander. He had filed a motion in federal court asking that the immigration proceedings involving his client be put on pause, stayed permanently. And he is sort of also alleging at the same time that the federal government withheld important information on the case for years, and we didn't elaborate on what that information was. But now a judge has to consider the validity of this motion. What that does is really put this matter on pause, which had really, after decades, come to the point at which it was at a crucial immigration hearing sort of status. So Oberlander has been waiting for an immigration hearing, which essentially decides whether or not he's going to be deported. And the current stay in those proceedings, which was granted last month, that was supposed to expire today. It actually does expire today. And that was granted on the basis of the fact that Mr. Oberlander, he's 97 years old, he's hard of hearing, and COVID restrictions sort of combined made it very difficult for his lawyer to be able to properly debrief him on the matter. So that stay was initially granted to him, and that is up today. This is also really putting on pause something that has gone on for, since the 90s. Mr. Oberlander has lost his citizenship 4 times, and 3 times he won it back on appeal before we got to this particular point in the process, the immigration process.
So, Katie, what's the reaction to this latest move? What have you heard?
Well, as you can imagine, members of the Canadian Jewish community are upset about this. They have been watching this for a long time. I reached out to the Center for Israel and Jewish Affairs last night as this happened. Here is lawyer Richard Marceau.
The abuse of the Canadian justice system it does not shed a good light on our justice system, because he's been playing tricks for the last 25 plus years, and it's time for it to end.
And of course, Mr. Oberlander's lawyer says this is not a stalling tactic. This is about fairness.
Well, what reaction, Katie, are you hearing to all of this from outside of Canada?
Well, tonight on The National, we're going to take you to a city about 1,000 kilometers south of Moscow. It's called Rostov-on-Don. And it has an interesting connection and a tragic connection to the Oberlander case. And that's because the unit he was attached to, the Einsatzgruppe and the brutal killing squad that he was an interpreter for, moved through Rostov in the summer of 1942. And that's when the Jewish population there was processed. Its members were told to strip. They were taken to a place known as the Ravine of Snakes, a large ditch, essentially, and they were shot. The Jewish community there was almost exterminated. There are about 27,000 bodies that lie in the Snakes Ravine, and it is the largest mass grave of Jewish killings in Russia. And it is a place of special significance because of that. And there is a Canadian connection to it. There is a Canadian rabbi who has gone there, and he is attempting to rebuild and heal the community there. And we're going to hear a little bit about him and the impact that this massacre has had there, and how they're still really living with the tragedy of what the Einsatzgruppen brought when they brought death to Rostov. Here is Rabbi Chaim Danziger.
For us, that's painful. To this day, it's shocking that there is still someone involved, because if you think about it, so few people are alive from immediate relatives right after so many years. So the thought that someone is still alive, living freely, and was not held accountable for what he did, that's a scary thought. Where is Canada? Where's the justice system? How could they look in the eyes of the families of victims and say, yeah, we dealt with this, we brought this man to justice?
So tonight we'll introduce you to some of the families, people who lost loved ones in the ravine of snakes, and their thoughts on how Canada has handled this case and why they're watching. Now, it's important to note that Mr. Oberlander has testified in the past that his only role in Rostov was to guard a grain barge, and he denied knowing anything about the execution of Jews in Rostov, something that the people there find hard to believe.
Thanks for this, Katie.
You're welcome.
And you can watch Katie Nicholson's documentary on what the community in Rostov-on-Don, Russia, has to say about the Oberlander case tonight on The National.